Uh,
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Huddle. It is Fat Tuesday. So if you are giving up chocolate for Lent or, alcohol, something like that, you should probably have a good time today splurging because it's going to be a long 40 days. Sean, Dan, anything you do to celebrate Fat Tuesday?
not since I got into my 40s. When I was in my 20s and 30s, it was usually a pretty good day, pretty good weekend. I once went to Mardi Gras and went to the Endymion Parade on Saturday, which is the kind of the big one.
Yeah.
You haven't lived until you have attended Mardi Gras.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Dan's assessment. I used to have fun on a Tuesday night, but now my Tuesday night is get into bed by 9:30 and maybe read for a second.
Have you guys ever done the DC has this big like Mardi Gras scene where a bunch of lawmakers and folks from Louisiana? I did it a few years ago, went with Scalise and his team. It was kind of bizarre. I'm not going to lie. I was like, wow, this is interesting. But
it's a lot tamer than it used to be when John Breaux. I mean, it's the state
Billy
of Louisiana, like delegation that throws this massive party.
Yep.
And I went to it in the kind of late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It was in Bourbon Street, but for DC standards, people let their hair down a little.
Yeah. The John Breaux, Billy Tozan, late 90s was definitely not what it is today.
Yeah,
I don't think hair was the only thing getting let down.
Went, so it was much later than that. But
I don't think Mike Johnson's lighting it up like Billy did.
Well, too bad I'm not on Capitol Hill because Scalise's office always has really good king cake. And I will say that's probably the best part of Mardi Gras is the king cake. So maybe I'll get some today. Maybe I won't. We'll see. Okay, guys, we have a great show for you today. A lot of really interesting stories percolating in the past 24 hours. We'll talk about Munich and the security conference 72 hours later. AOC turns out actually doesn't love her coverage. No shock there. We'll talk about that. We'll discuss this sort of fork in the road for Iran right now. The U.S. meeting with Iranian leaders today, a big moment that could signal a potential new path to a peace deal or a nuclear deal of some sort, or maybe a path to war/strikes in the region. We'll discuss the Texas Senate primary, which early voting begins today, I believe, and primaries March 3rd. President sort of weighed in on that. And then last night, Stephen Colbert announced that he couldn't have one of the Democratic candidates in the primary on his show because of FCC regulations. We'll dive into that because that's very buzzy. We'll talk about the SAVE Act latest and this missive the president actually sent a few days ago, but we haven't touched on, suggesting he might actually do some sort of executive order to try to enact some of the SAVE Act. I'm sure that will be caught up in the courts. And then, of course, we'll discuss the legacy of the Reverend Jesse Jackson, huge civil rights icon, passed away this morning, and we will reflect on his life. First, the daybook, not a ton going on. Congress, again, still out on recess. The president has an ambassador credentialing at 2 p.m. He's got policy meetings at 4 and 5. But other than that, everybody's sort of going to be focused on this pair of big foreign policy meetings that are happening in Geneva, which is number one, like I just mentioned, the Iran meeting, but there's also one on Russia and Ukraine, which we'll talk slightly about.
It's the same two people, by the way, basically doing both down the street from one another, which is just a wild thing in the abstract. But
it totally is.
Here
Sean,
we are.
This is just how the president operates, though, right? If he likes you, he's going to put you on 5 million jobs.
I mean, it's just it's about trust.
Yeah.
He trusts Witkoff and he trusts Jared.
Yeah.
So it's not just whether he likes them or not. I think and obviously Dan Driscoll, the Army Secretary, is going over to be part of the Ukraine deal as well, which is a JD guy. So
Let's save it for the topic.
I was just trying to think of like I was the assistant U.S. trade rep for 3 years. Spent a lot of time in Geneva because the WTO is based there, and I was just trying to think of the weather because it is a beautiful place to spend some time. And they said the second meeting was at the Intercon, which is where that was generally where we, probably the default place where a lot of U.S. government stays, which is right down from where the U.S. mission to Geneva is.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like I was reminiscing as they were describing.
I was just going to say, where are you going with this one, Sean? Okay.
old Dan, at my age, we just talk about the old days.
Going to say, apparently.
Speaking of the weather, it's going to be 55 degrees here, which is a celebration in and of itself. Please make the snow go away. I just want to grill chicken today. That's if I can do that today.
Grill in the snow. I do it all the time. So what?
Really? I don't know. I'm afraid I'm going to like.
Can you grill in New York City?
Yeah, well, in our new apartment, in the old one, we had a terrace and a barbecue. Yep.
You're allowed to go out on the terrace, huh?
Mm-hmm. I had a smoker too. Smoke ribs, fish. Yeah.
Wow. I always thought that like there's a big deal about doing it in apartment buildings.
Yep.
All right. Well, back to the news. Guys, if you like the show, do me a favor right now and send a link to one of your friends who loves politics. Ask them to subscribe. This helps us get our numbers up, helps us get in front of more eyes. If you're already subscribed, like the show. And if you prefer to listen, follow us, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We really appreciate your support there. Just a quick word from our sponsor this week, Cozy Earth. I mentioned this yesterday. Great Valentine's Day gift. My husband is on his second pair of Cozy Earth joggers. I got him 2 because 1 was not enough. He's got this olive pair that is like super soft. They're called the ultra soft joggers. I wish I could wear them, but he's way too big. I can't borrow his clothes. But as Sean says all the time, he loves them. Dan, have you worn them?
I did. I wore them this past weekend. Yeah.
There you go. Awesome. Clearly need to get a pair. And if joggers aren't your thing, the sheets are fantastic. Unfortunately for me right now, they're in the wash. So I am back to linen. Not a good thing. And miss my Cozy Earth sheets. Need to get another pair of those. Guys, you can go to CozyEarth.com. Use my code HUDDLE for up to 20% off. Again, they've got clothes, sheets, great smelling candles. Don't forget the bubble cuddle blanket. Amazing.
As if you could.
Amazing
you
merchandise.
Can't forget that blanket once you snuggle in it.
Yeah, it's great. And thanks to our sponsor, Cozy Earth. Okay, let's jump into 72 hours after Munich. So, guys, this story to me, let's put up our first element, is just amazing. You basically have AOC complaining about her coverage. She calls up the New York Times while she's still in Germany, and she complains that this negative coverage is overshadowing her anti-authoritarian message. Here's a quote from the story. The way her performance was microscopically dissected through the lens of what it means for a hypothetical White House campaign frustrated Miss Ocasio-Cortez, 36. She said she worried her message was being lost. My reaction was boo-hoo. Okay, welcome to the big leagues. And Dan, I want to start with you on this because, she is pretty media savvy. Not pretty, she's considered very media savvy, but I can't decide if this is a good idea or does this just show that she has thin skin and sort of elongate the story?
Yeah, it was a horrible idea. It's now getting to the point where the kind of cover up is worse than the initial crime. Start with who she called. She called the New York Times, right? We talk about how her brand is social media savvy. She's young. She constantly is online, kind of giving and taking and just in the game. And next to Gavin Newsom, it's who people said, gets this modern world better than anyone else. To argue that basically it's unfair that people are taking clips and sending them around in short snippets, like, duh, like it's pathetic and embarrassing for her to make this kind of whining argument that when your calling card is that you're kind of the party queen of social media. So I don't understand what she was doing. Like, if you think about it, a smart move would be kind of like what Trump does, which is what would have been like, look, Trump bungles names, Trump bungles regions all the time, right? How come no one's talking about that? Think about when the Access Hollywood tape happened. What did Trump say? Look at Bill Clinton with women. Let's talk about that, right? But to sit there and literally just complain about this, I don't get what she's doing. I think it is just a stunning kind of immature. And I think, I mean, I said to you guys this weekend, you know, not a big deal in the long run. She'll move past it. This just now has more and more people kind of laughing at her within the party. It's amazing.
So, look, I will just say yes to what Dan said.
Yes.
But I'll go a bit further, because it wasn't just the Taiwan thing. She tried to take a pot shot at Marco Rubio, and didn't get the history of the United States right. And if you're going to take pot shots, of course people are going to criticize you. I mean, like, she tried to do it. She was hoping to land a punch on Rubio, and it turned out pretty horribly. So it was just all around. And then to Dan's point, to call the New York Times and whine about it, like what that says to me, though, I mean, to Dan's point about like social media queen, yes. But here's the thing. She understood why she was going there, which was she was trying to show donors and DC Democratic establishment that I'm more than just a talking point and a social media video. Like, look at me. I can be on the world stage. I can carry myself. And so when she called the New York Times, I think this was an acknowledgement. I've got to clean up on aisle 6 big time.
Well, that
was reaching out to donors and to establishment types in the Democratic Party that said, hey, I'm getting taken advantage of because I said some stupid stuff and they actually reported it.
But think about this, right? Why is Friday so deadly for her? Because it's ricocheting around the internet. And so to the average person, it's crossing their screen, right? It is a short 30-second clip. Why not go and respond forcefully, or at least put allies like on Rachel Maddow, on MS Now, people to push? There's nothing. There's no cavalry. There's nothing. And for her to say that, am I acting like someone who is trying to run? No, because I'm there for a very different specific purpose. When you literally reached out to the New York Times on Thursday to say, I've hired Bernie Sanders' foreign policy person. I've been working for over a month on my speech. Like, she raised the curtain herself, proactively gave them the details to, as you know, I think to Sean's point, to tease to the intelligentsia, like, get ready for me. And then part of your whining is, how dare you say that I'm, this was about running for president? She's embarrassing herself now. And now you start to say to yourself, oh boy, like, you could recover, but you better start showing that you got what it takes, or she may not even get out of the gate.
Okay, two quick things. The first one being, in the story, she doesn't ever say I'm not running for president, which was interesting to me. She doesn't say that. Second thing I was going to add to your point, Dan, about how she typically talks to reporters and which reporters she doesn't typically talk to, i.e. the more, legacy media, print journalism type. She's more focused on Instagram, TikTok, etc. Dave Weigel, who's a reporter at Semaphore, covers Democrats. Like, he's just a fantastic reporter. He tweeted a little bit about this yesterday and said that while AOC is often seen as somebody who's really quick on her feet and very good with media, she actually picks and chooses quite often. If you look very closely at who she's talking to, like, she isn't doing a lot of those print interviews where they can really, get her and ask her tough questions. She often will sort of create these moments that go viral for herself, but that's very different than, being on the other side of somebody who's constantly coming at you with difficult questions. But it's just so funny because I've never sort of seen that side of her, where she stumbles like that. And now it's just like, okay, she's got to get out there and do more of this volleying if she wants to have a shot in 2028. And
by the way, I would love to know what Bernie Sanders and Zohran Mamdani are saying to her. Because those are two allies that are silent. Like, they're not defending her. They're not helping her right now. She's flapping in the wind.
Can I just do this? Alexandria, you must prepare a little better. You've got to go out there and talk to reporters. You've got to try to enunciate your policies better.
That's pretty good,
done. It's
Not
very
bad.
well done. All
I
right.
will tell you this, and I was not prepared for this. Back in the day, and I know we'll get to this, my Jesse Jackson was right up there. But I'm not going to even try today out of respect for. But I will say, like, to Dan's point, like, here's the thing about the pushback. It's one thing when you are taken out of context or when the speech isn't viewed in its entirety or whatever. What is her pushback? I didn't know what strategic ambiguity is. I didn't know U.S. history. Like, I was wrong. And people are making it. I mean, like, she was mocking Marco Rubio incorrectly. What's the pushback? What do you want to tell your allies? Hey, go out there and rewrite history for me. Go out there and say that, like, we actually don't. I mean, like, there's not an easy pushback when you were blatantly wrong. And I think the same goes, by the way, Gretchen Whitmer's answer. I think the way she came out of the gate was like just so pathetic, where she was like, she literally, by the way, Whitmer, I think, is worse because what she did was gave a clickable quote forever, which is governors really don't know foreign policy, is what she said. You should ask one of the ambassadors. I was like, oh my God, literally, you just gave away the best clip forever now. You are.
I said this yesterday. I don't know what her game plan was going there because all the local press was to advocate for this aerospace and defense manufacturing industry that's kind of sprouting up in Michigan. Like, okay, governors do business trips overseas all the time, but at the Munich summit, and then to Sean's point, you sit on a panel and you're asked about the war in Ukraine. I mean, you can't say, like, literally Taiwan, okay, maybe you're in Germany, you don't think, like, you've prepped for NATO and you get a question and, whatever. The war in Ukraine, to be like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't, kind of phone a friend.
It's not just, I don't know. This is why what she said was so damaging. She said, it's not like governors do foreign policy. So literally, to the extent when she runs, you're basically, the opponents are going to say, she's not ready. And Rahm Emanuel's comeback on both of them was kind of brilliant, which is, look, as a guy who's actually served in the Indo-Pacific, like, I know, but, I'm not going to say it. Like, it was like such the little, like, slapping, like, I'm not going to hit you, but I am.
Well, and this is where, too, what's so fascinating about AOC is, I mean, I genuinely believe, and I have no knowledge of this, that the reason she kind of hesitated so badly was because she was like, shoot, it's ambiguity is the answer, but I don't really want to just say that. And she fumbled. So to Sean's point, if you're going to call the New York Times, just say, hey, look, I froze for a second about how to say this, but the policy is ambiguity. And I was ambiguous, like, ha, 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 or attack. Do one or the other. But to just call and complain, this is unfair.
That wasn't even complain. That was whining.
Yes, correct.
Complete whining. Okay, we got to move on. So next topics, U.S. and Iranians meet. So Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, as we said at the top, have a doubleheader. Ooh, sports reference. That's baseball, right? Yes.
There it is.
Okay. Doubleheader on peace talks today in Geneva. The first one is the main event, this conversation with Iranian's foreign minister. Then they move on, apparently, like, across the city. They have a meeting on the Ukraine-Russia talks. This is about a week before the 4-year anniversary of the war's beginning. But let's just start with Iran. So we could learn, as I said at the top today, whether we could potentially see a new Iran nuclear deal under this president, or could we see more strikes? We've got an element for you. The president was asked which one does he think is more likely, and unsurprisingly, the deal maker thinks we'll get a deal.
But it's the country is doing very well. Any questions?
What are you expecting from these Iran talks in Geneva tomorrow?
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. We'll see what can happen. I mean, it's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal.
I've been told that a deal is next to impossible.
No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal. Are you going to sit down with?
Sean, you're hearing a lot of, sort of conservative, I don't want to say talking heads, but a lot of conservative hosts, you watch Fox News and stuff. A lot of people like Brian Kilmeade have come out and said they're dragging their feet. like we need to do something here. The president clearly still optimistic. Like, do you think that moving these assets to the region, because that's the big difference here, right? We have a new strike carrier in the region, or almost there. Like, does that? I'm sorry, carrier group. You know the language better than me. What does that make a difference? Like, do you think that these guys are actually going to cave when they haven't so far?
Well, I don't know that it makes a difference I think Iran, I mean, the president was right that these guys, they're in a tough spot. I mean, I just, because you basically have to be willing to give up everything in terms of the regime to assuage what the president and his team want. And I just don't think they're there. But you don't put a second carrier strike group. I mean, the USS Gerald Ford, like, this is not, there's now 2, right? And all of the destroyers and the rest of the battle group. I mean, this is a big deal. And by probably sometime today, later today, that strike group will be in range. You have 2 strike groups, massive amounts of firepower. And I guess the thing is, with 1, you were sending a signal. With 2, this is like, I have a hard time seeing how you pull back if Iran doesn't come to something. You've upped the ante significantly by putting the second group in, right? And that's where I think the tell is. And I look, the funny thing is, the president said Iran wants a deal. I agree with that. I think he wants a deal too.
Yeah,
absolutely he does.
Just going to say that. Yeah.
So I think this was him saying, guys, I'm trying to give you an out. I'm trying really hard, but make no mistake, like, I did it before, I'll do it again. And that's why he referenced the B2s. I'm just saying, like, we've kind of come to a precipice where we're looking over and it's like, guys, if you don't come up with this, we got to do something. And I can see strikes being rather imminent.
Because this feels kind of like what happened with Venezuela, right? Like, we kept moving assets to the region, and then, it's like, guys, like, if you don't do something, we're gonna hit. And I mean, it was different. We captured Maduro, but still, like,
well, we also don't know.
Very
here's the thing.
similar.
After the meeting with Netanyahu, we never got a full readout of.
You're taking my line, Spicer.
I feel it. It's coming right through. I can see.
What was the line? What was the line? I missed it.
And so I think that, like, here's what I think was interesting after that meeting. Again, sometimes in Washington, it's not what was said, it's what was not said. Mm. And what I thought was fascinating about that meeting with Iran was Bibi could have come out and been like, the president and I had a great meeting and we are continuing negotiations and more gobbledygook diplomatic talk. He didn't. And I think that sort of, that again, was another tell to me that we've kind of come to a realization as to, like, here's what we could do. Okay, let's kind of give them one last hurrah. But I think we're there.
And I think that's, just to piggyback, add a little more to what Sean was saying, which is, not only did Israel then kind of leak, like, this is a waste of time trying to get a deal, but Lindsey Graham and some of Israel's biggest allies have been saying, including in Munich, we got to do this. Like, we got to go and hit Iran. And I come back to, what is the goal? Because in Venezuela, we pinpricked the president out and put him in New York. It is not one person in Iran. It's a whole regime. They have both on the street personnel, and obviously they have a military. What's being reported is that we're preparing to not just hit for a few hours, but for days. And that is once you start doing something of that scale, we just pray it's successful. We pray the soldiers that are doing it and our assets in the region and our allies are safe. But for a president who got his start saying we're getting out of Iraq and out of the Middle East, this is remarkable.
But he was able to do this with Iran last year in the sense that he went in, like, bombed them and then came out, no boots on the ground or anything like that. I mean,
right, but it was a failure in that we didn't take it out, right? I mean, this is the problem. And I know it's going to, like, make heads explode, but I said it then, I'll say it now. We did not eliminate the nuclear program. We did not eliminate the ballistic missile program. And Sean and I both said, what do you do with the regime, right? Because the regime that's hell-bent on both is still in power. So by most accounts, what's now being talked about is the regime's got to go. Is it a domestic uprising? Well, we're going to try to do everything we can to help with the domestic uprising. But again, it's 80 million people. It's bigger than Texas. and it's got a lot of tools in its own tool belt.
Just very briefly on Ukraine, because the 4-year anniversary is coming up next week. There's been 2 million casualties, hundreds of thousands of people who have died on both sides. The president said this was going to be the first war he came in and solved and helped bring to peace. Obviously, this is still continuing to be a problem. The president told reporters yesterday that Ukraine better come to the table fast. Obviously, a lot of people believe Putin is the problem here more so than Zelensky. I mean, whenever this comes across, our text chain, I'm just like, what is new? Like, what are we doing here? I guess you can't just throw your hands up and walk away, because then you look like you're giving up. But it doesn't seem like we're like any closer than we were a few weeks ago. Am I wrong about that, Dan or Sean?
Weeks, months.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think there's two things that Trump is trying to square, or hasn't been able to square in his head, which is, to your point, if you walk away, it is a stain kind of on your legacy that you kind of lost Ukraine. But on the other hand, the Trump view of the world increasingly is the kind of, what do they call it? The Don Road doctrine, that you kind of, we have our region, South America, North America, everyone out. China's going to kind of take the Asian region, and Russia's the king of the European region. He's not saying it explicitly, but he is saying it implicitly. And so what do? Right? I mean, there are all these stories that we're readying business deals with Russia. For a year, the answer has been obvious. The only thing Putin respects is strength. You'd have to surge in more resources to let him know he cannot gain any more land. The reality is he's taking more land every day. It's small, but Putin knows at this rate, I will win in a few years. He'll have all of Ukraine.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I think more than anything, though, one thing has been clear to me, which is Putin will never, ever agree to a deal. Like, it doesn't matter what the deal is. He just is going to obfuscate and say that it's not good enough, and he doesn't like the paper that it's written on or the font that it's, he'll always have something to object to. His goal is to just sort of wait this out. I don't know that he ever will have the full strength to take over. Like, I think that it doesn't matter whether Europe continues to fund this or not. Maybe they have enough to keep the lines where they are, but there's I just don't see any peace deal of substance. Now, at the end of the day, could Putin potentially say, I'll agree to whatever, and it's just a way to obfuscate? Sure. But there will be no significant lasting peace while Putin's still in power.
Let me ask you this, Sean and Rachel. Let's say Democrats win the House and Senate and put up $100 billion in arms sales and a surge to say, with Europe, Putin can't get another square inch of land. What does Trump do?
He probably vetoes it.
Okay, you think he does?
Yeah.
It would be an interesting showdown, because Vance would say no, and he's getting ready to run.
Yeah.
I don't know where Rubio and the Hawks would be. It's an interesting dynamic that we have.
I don't know, because the thing that's interesting is, I don't know that the American people, if you go out there and sell, if you're the Democrats and you want to say, hey, by the way, our affordability agenda is sending, X billions of dollars to a foreign country to fight a war. Like, I'm not sure that they want to do that.
Well, my final question was similar, but a little different. It was just very quickly, like, is there anything short of like sending money over to Ukraine that the president could do to stick it to Putin? I mean, like, a lot of Republicans, a lot of people are like, what can he do to like just stick it to this?
The only thing I'm wholly respect.
What can he do without going back on his promise not to, continue doling out cash?
The only thing I'm wholly respects is getting punched in the face. That's
what I mean.
The answer is, I know that, this is now going back several months, but there are some secondary tariffs that really will shut off. The other thing that Putin has to deal with are all the oligarchs that are trying to make sure that they still have access to money and funding and some of the black market stuff that comes from Russian oil. So there are additional things that he can do. Yes. And I think it's less public, but I do think there are some other ways to make Putin feel it internally.
I'm sure Lindsey Graham would just love that. Okay, we got to move on. We have a meaty Texas segment that I want to get to here. So, okay, early voting starts, as we said, today. But if you're a Texas Republican and you were looking to President Trump to decide, how you want to vote, you're not going to get a direct answer. He was asked about this last night. Take a listen to what he said.
Republicans in D.C. are asking you to endorse John Cornyn, but you haven't yet. Is there a chance you wouldn't endorse Paxton, and why haven't you endorsed Cornyn?
I just haven't made a decision on that race yet. It's got a ways to go, and I haven't. He's a good man. John is I like all three of them, actually. I like all three.
All three of them.
Those are the toughest races. They've all supported me. They're all good, and you're supposed to pick one. So we'll see what happens, but I support all three.
Involved in the
We'll see what happens, but I support all three. Just two other.
Can I make two initial points on
Sure.
this? One is listen to what that reporter asked. DC Republicans, why haven't you endorsed Cornyn? I just, to me, sometimes like it goes back to, we talked about this, I think a while ago on asking questions. Did you want to know, like, what was the goal there? Like you could easily say, where do you stand in the Texas primary, and gotten a much better answer than why haven't you endorsed Cornyn? To me, I just think, again, that's take the race aside and just media 101. That was a horrible question. And it just shows you how bad some of these people are at doing their job. Like the simple questions just should have been, where do you stand in that race, and gotten a much better answer from him than loading it with, why haven't you endorsed Cornyn?
Well, I think
statement.
The reporter was trying to tee up the fact that Thune and a bunch of Senate Republicans are in one place and the White House is in.
Yeah, but then ask that.
But yeah, I was gonna say, no, I get what you're saying. But let's we just got a lot to get through.
Okay, so the second thing is, by the way, and I'll just point this out, regardless of what you think of this race and where you're on, I'm not making a candidate statement. But I think one of the brilliant things that the president did last night is he recognized, we've talked about this before, he has a slim majority in the House and the Senate, and I thought he actually was very smart about doing this. At this point in juncture, and again, I'm not trying, like, there are people that I get are pro one side or another in the chat and all over. I'm just giving you an analytical position from the president's standpoint. He is very smart to play it this way because he doesn't know where this thing's going to end up, and he needs a vote, right? So you saw what he did with Cassidy in Louisiana, where he endorsed Julia Letlow. Now Cassidy's like, God, I don't need to vote for any of your people. I don't need to support you because you've already crapped on me. So he was smart, understanding that I need to keep this coalition together. Again, don't misinterpret that as like what he could do politically, but he understands I need everybody's vote right now.
Let's bring up this Polymarket poll on the GOP Texas Senate primary to see where. Okay, so here we have it right here. So people believe that Ken Paxton has a 72% chance of winning. John Cornyn has a 23%. Wesley Hunt 6%. Sean, you referenced this a little yesterday. It seems like this seems pretty accurate, but I just want to put a couple of more elements in here before we jump back into detail. So Paxton right now, starting this week, apparently is really stepping up his campaign in Texas. This could just be a time thing, right? Early voting is starting. People are going to be going to the polls pretty soon. But he had his first rally in 10 months since he declared his candidacy. He's out there saying John Cornyn's money is a problem. Basically that he's the establishment candidate, which is true, right? I'm not their person. I'm never going to be their person. Meanwhile, Cornyn, who does have the money, they're saying today that his campaign and supporting groups raised $3 million in the first 5 weeks of this year, and he has $10 million on hand during this pre-primary period. Sean, do you think Paxton is stepping up now because he sort of smells blood in the water and could potentially get past 50%, which would make him the nominee, or is this definitely going to go to a runoff even if he wins by a landslide?
I would never say never, but I would suggest to you that he could get into the 40s, and this is about momentum. I mean, if you can get into the 40s, he's at, by all the polls. And by the way, primary polls, even in a state like Texas, are very challenging, and especially in a three-way race. So I think there could be a big delta here in terms of what the polls say and where we end up. But I could, if Paxton were to get into the mid 40s, that would be a really, really strong position to go into that final runoff in May. So I think that what he's trying to do is drive up that vote and make it seem inevitable.
Yeah. On the Dem side, Dan, let's talk about this because Crockett has new internal polling showing that she could beat Paxton. Timing, of course, is key to this, right? She's trying to win and she's trying to make the case to Democratic voters that she can beat Paxton, who is currently the front runner. She says, or her team says, that she's up 49% to 45% in a head-to-head, hypothetically, with him. You believe it?
No. I mean, I do think that if it's Crockett Paxton, it will be close because they both have a lot of baggage. But I think that ultimately, I do believe Paxton would likely beat her. I think what's interesting, if we put up the Democratic primary winner of what Polymarket's showing, which is that people, according to Polymarket, 63%. They think there's a 63% probability that Tallarico is going to win. Talking to people in DC a month ago, they were bullish on Tallarico.
Right.
There's a worry. Now, again, this is the Beltway crowd, so take it with a grain of salt, but that Crockett may pull this one out, that the attack that Colin Allard had on Tallarico did penetrate within the Democratic electorate in Texas, and we'll see. I mean, I think if Tallarico pulls it out, I think this will be and Paxton wins. This is going to be a toss-up, at least, and till Labor Day, unless there's some opposition research or Paxton can bring everybody home fast. But Crockett right now I think has momentum.
Speaking of Tallarico, so Stephen Colbert said he was going to have him on the show last night and that he was blocked by CBS attorneys who actually called him and said, you can't do this because of the FCC's equal time rule. This is essentially a rule that if you have one side on, you got to have the other side on. And it's typically, there's been exceptions for news and there used to be exceptions for talk shows, but now Brendan Carr has been reviewing that. And I guess that's what sort of held this up. First to you, Dan, do you think that has any impact on this race?
I don't think it necessarily has an impact on the Democratic primary. I think it might have a small impact in the broader electorate. It's just another thing that I think average voters just don't like. They just, I mean, look, the average person's not paying that much attention, but the more stories of government heavy-handedness, the more the average person just doesn't like it.
Sean, what do you make of this?
It's stupid.
I mean,
I'm excited for it. I think the idea that these, there's a reason that the FCC has an equal time rule, right? And the idea that we have now accepted the fact that public airways are being used as a tool of the Democratic Party is ridiculous. Like, I grew up staying up watching Letterman and Carson, and now you've got Colbert, Kimmel, using these as political talk shows at night with every Democratic candidate, giving them free airtime. So I like the idea of saying, hey, great, you want to have them? Then equal time applies.
But what if no Republicans want to come on the show? Then you just can't have Democrats?
What do you mean? Do you realize that in whatever year, when they did the analysis of Kimmel, I don't know that a Republican has been invited on Kimmel outside of Mike Lindell and a ball machine in like 8-9 years. They're not invited. And I do think, look, again, there's a big difference. The broadcast networks are subject to FCC, not cable, but broadcast, because they use public airways. And you have between The View and Saturday Night Live and the late night shows using these shows to become political venues for Democrats and left-wing causes. I'm sorry, these are public airways. And if the answer is great, if you guys want to go down that road, then make it equal. I'm fine with that. But I think for too long, Democrats have gotten a free ride, and I'm fine with.
I recall a Republican candidate in 2015 and 16 that got on late night shows when other Republican candidates were not being invited because he was a ratings machine. His name was Donald J. Trump. And boy, did he love all the invitations that he was getting. And he said, I'm a ratings king. It is so embarrassing. And I said this on X, and I'm going to keep saying it from now till November. Boy, I hope no one at the FCC put a paper trail together, because the Democratic investigative committees are going to be up these companies' rear ends about how much bootlicking there is to the Trump White House. It is going to be, I mean, we talk about a piñata for AOC, and I know Axios teased this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, and here's the problem that all these companies have, right? Sources and methods in Washington are gossiped about all over town, right? When you're a lobbyist, when you're a head of government affairs, and you do something well and headquarters loves it, you over lunch tell your lobbyists, you tell your friends, and it permeates around Washington how people are getting results. Don't think that doesn't reach Capitol Hill and isn't being cataloged.
Dan, what do you know that you're hinting
all
at
these
so
companies,
cryptically?
All these companies that 6 months ago bragged around town about how they greased the wheel for policy action, oh boy, it's reached the hill.
That sounds like a whole nother segment we're going to have to do at some point. But because there have been a couple, not just Axios today. I think it was NBC did a story about this. No, was it NBC? Yeah, NBC. No, MS. I'm sorry, not NBC. MS did a story about this yesterday. Anyway, clearly percolating in the bloodstream with Democrats right now. Let's very quickly, we got 2 more segments. Talk about the Save America Act. So at least one powerful Republican back in his district hearing from Republicans about the Save America Act. Fox News was trailing John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, and he reiterated his commitment to putting this up for a vote, but it will be likely a procedural vote, not a vote up and down on the legislation itself. The filibuster, he said that he's not going to get rid of it. But the big thing people are sort of chattering about right now is this Truth Social post that the president put up on, I believe it was Friday night. Let's put that up here. The president suggesting that he may sign some sort of executive order on voting. He said there will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not, ! Also, the people of our country are insisting on citizenship and no mail-in ballots with exceptions for military, disability, illness, or travel. Sean, do you have any insight into this? Because he has tried to do something similar before, and it's sort of caught in the courts right now, if I'm not mistaken. Like is this, doing the same thing again, or is this like another, legal justification that they think maybe will work better in the courts and help in November? Like, what are you hearing about this? I'm just curious.
I think it's just an overall, I mean, as far as I know, and I don't have anything specific. I think there's an overall commitment to making sure that they keep the issue front and center. Okay. And also that they show the base. We're continuing to fight for it. We get it. We know you care about it. We care about it too. And we're going to continue to fight for it.
Right. Because it is it's popular. Obviously, we've talked about that. A lot of polling showing.
Well, by the way, I had 3 Democrats, as you guys know, like none of them wallflowers yesterday. Julian Epstein, Mike Nellis, and Johanna Maska. And I asked them, I just said, we went down a whole host of issues, but when we got to the SAVE Act, I said, let's just do this straight up. Save America is voter ID and proof of citizenship. So tell me, each one of you, do you oppose either one of those in principle, and why, if so? Not one of them. No. And Julian Epstein was the chief counsel for the House Judiciary Committee, longtime, bulldog, like very outspoken Democrat. Mike Nellis, very progressive, committed Democrat. Like, these guys are not wallflowers when it comes to the cause. But every single one of them agreed that we could come to an agreement. I mean, there was Mike Nellis was talking about affordability. And I said, okay, if Republicans agree, which they did in Georgia, for example, to make it very, either free or accessible, and made it, would you, and he was like, sure. So, okay, I think Republicans would be fine with that. Let's figure out, using the Georgia model, how to make sure that we make it more accessible, ensure that there's no barrier to cost or cost to barrier. But so the reality is that it is very popular. And I think that the president is right to focus on this and to fight for it, because it's common sense. And frankly, I find it insulting to blacks and to women to say, like, you can't get one. It's so difficult to do this because, women get married and so many times change their name, and they couldn't possibly figure out how to get an ID then. And blacks just, I find it racist, misogynistic to basically say to women and blacks in particular, you can't do this because, as Kamala Harris said, you have no ability to photocopy things.
But Dan, I want to come to you really quickly. But Sean, you're saying he's saying this just to keep this front and center. You don't think he's actually going to sign a new?
No, I think he might. But I'm saying that, like, more than anything, I think that what they want to do is make sure that they are very clear that it's a priority and a commitment, and they're going to keep fighting for it.
I mean, but so like that's been the Democratic counter argument, which is it about cost, which is, it is real. I mean, we just got one of our kids a passport. It's about $175 to get stuff. We didn't have his birth certificate. We had to pay $150 to get a copy of the birth certificate. We did it. I agree with you, Sean. My question to you is, let's say the Democrats said, all right, if all of this would be free, right? Because then you take that off the argument. Does Trump really want this off the table? Or do you think the Republicans would love to say, to your point about Putin,
I can tell you,
big paper clips.
Look, I will tell you this. I think it is a very real issue for a lot of us, myself included. So if we pass this, I'm good. There is no like 100%.
Because then you can't say the election was stolen. I mean, in 26, you wouldn't be able to say.
I think we would cheer this. So.
And you'd find a way to say the election was stolen.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. One more segment on this. So the Reverend Jesse Jackson died this morning, 84, protege of Martin Luther King Jr., leader from the civil rights movement, ran for president a few times in the 80s.
Twice. Yep.
Twice. Okay, before I was born. Let's just, Dan, start with you. Reflect on his legacy a little bit and what he meant.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, between when Martin Luther King was assassinated in the late 60s, Jesse Jackson then I think first ran, I think it was in 84, or 88, was the first national kind of somewhat serious black candidate to emerge since Martin Luther King. And he really kind of gave a new voice to the Black civil rights movement within politics, coming out of what was a very tumultuous period in the 60s. And so, I think you can argue that he helped pave the way for Barack Obama. James Wilder ended up running for governor, became the first black governor of Virginia since Reconstruction. A short while after Jackson first ran, you had Mayor Dinkins here in New York, a black mayor. And, he really was the trailblazer coming out of the 60s, and great orator, stayed active in Democratic politics even after he ran, was very close to the Clintons, was helpful to Barack Obama. Really, I mean, I didn't know him well, but it was several times in rooms with him. He just continued to be a part of the cause. And, it's quite a legacy.
Sean?
Look, here's all I'll say. I am not a believer. Like when someone passes away, I think they should, we should avoid trying to dance on their grave, let their family mourn and have their day. But that being said, we're a political show, watching the coverage this morning, I wish that the media would cover people on the right the way they're covering Jesse Jackson. There is no mention of any of the issues that he faced, the anti-Semitism, the way that Rainbow Push conducted business, some of the anyway. I would just say this. I wish the Jackson family peace today, and that they can remember their father and uncle and etc. But I just would caution some of the media, the way that they have fawned over this today and very one-sided, that when the next time that a conservative passes, think about how you cover this passing today.
Does something in particular jump out to you, Sean? Like what? So
well, no, I mean, again, I think about some of the people on the right that have passed away recently and how the media have covered them as controversial lightning rod figures. Jesse Jackson, again, I will agree with Dan. He was very historic in terms of his runs and his legacy on the left, but it wasn't without controversy. And I haven't heard one newscast this morning note any of that. And that's, again, I don't when someone passes away, the last thing that we need to do is make that a difficult day for their family. But I just find that the media, the way they cover people when they pass, is not equal.
Versus what happened with Charlie Kirk, for instance. Yes.
Charlie or Scott Adams. It's always about the lead in the Washington Post and the New York Times.
Controversial figure, yes.
Controversial right-wing lightning rod, whereas Jesse Jackson is a historic figure, passes away. Again, look, when someone passes away and they're gone, like, I don't need their family to endure any further controversy or whatever. But I do think that, like, listening to some of these folks today, I was like, you guys got to give me a break. Like, don't pretend that you're not in the tank for this side when all that you can say about them is very positive, whereas you lead with the negative when anyone on the right passes.
Yeah.
And it is true. There was a very controversial sides to Jesse Jackson. I was just going to say Donald Trump, and I haven't seen the whole thing, but it just flashed across my computer, put out a statement saying that Jesse Jackson was a good, quote, good man and a force of nature. And Trump knew him because the Rainbow Coalition was headquartered here in New York City. Trump being very active in New York City and state politics for decades. His family was active. His dad was active. He knew Jesse Jackson very well.
Not just that, Dan, but it's a great point that you're bringing up, because for reasons that are not worth getting into, I was rereading the Art of the Comeback. And Trump speaks very specifically about not in that book about how Jesse Jackson wouldn't get access to a lot of venues. And Trump was like, hey, dude, we're buddies. Why don't you use my property for this? And da-da-da. Like, they weren't just close. Trump was very helpful to Jackson, helped him when he was rising up his movement. And again, I always get a kick out of the fact that when you go back and look at these pictures of all these people who had loved hanging around with Donald Trump before he ran for politics, Jesse Jackson being one of them. So, it's amazing how some of these people turned on him the second that he ran. But Jackson and Trump definitely had a very collegial relationship, and Trump was very helpful to him.
Yeah, Jackson, Sharpton, and Don King were all buddies with Trump.
Well, and Don King still is. Sharpton's the only one who's not in the.
And Bill
Don
Clinton.
King
We've got Morning Joe every morning bashing him.
And Chuck Schumer, and they all were.
Okay, let's take some questions, guys. All right, from Twitter, X, sorry. The Supreme Court has set 3 dates later this month to announce the verdict on numerous cases. Which way do you think they'll go on cases like birthright citizenship, the VRA, Voting Rights Act, and tariffs? We actually have a poly market that we want to bring up for the tariff question. So people think there's a 25% chance that the Supreme Court will rule in favor of Trump on tariffs. Sean, Dan, who we want to take this? Is it right? Is it wrong?
I'll take this one. I mean, let's go take them in order, maybe. So we'll do tariffs, VRA, birthright.
Sure.
I'm surprised when I saw this poly market. I was surprised that it's at 25%. I believe that the court will probably rule that most of that they'll give Trump the trade dispute ones, the 301s, the 232 say he had absolute authority to do that. The IEPA ones, the emergency ones, which are the bigger ones, but not the totality of it, they'll rule that was an Article 1 function. Congress has to maintain it. They didn't give them the full. So I believe that it'll be a somewhat split decision, but that the emergency ones that he generally uses will be struck down for purely constitutional. I was surprised at this, though. I don't know about you guys, but when I saw 25% of people thinking this, I thought, wow, because everybody in the general political punditry class always says the court's in the tank for Trump. And you see this to me shows how astute people are. That I trade is a constitutional Article 1 function. And so I believe, why don't we just stick to this one and then we can do voting rights and the other one real quick.
I mean, I'll just say I agree with Sean. I think it's a split decision.
But were you surprised to see this? When I saw the poly market at 25%, I thought if I were listening to the media and hearing about how the court's in the pocket of Trump and always sides with Trump, to see that only 25% think that.
I think if you listen to that hearing and you listen to even administration figures and Republicans in Congress, there seems to be a general sense that he may not get, exactly what Trump wants. So I personally believe the court is pretty much in the bag for Trump, but I do think on this one, they're going to split the baby a little bit.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Well, like I said, the big ones that everybody's going to care about, the IEPA ones are the ones that I think, and then they'll just revert to the trade dispute mechanism. But I think
they won't have to give money back yet, right, Sean?
Well,
Like,
that's
they're gonna
part of the-
change it and like
So if
new
they rule
justification,
that,
that sort of thing.
so if they rule, so Costco is the lead plaintiff in this, if I'm correct. And so basically what they're saying is you had no right to exact these tariffs because you didn't have the authority, right? So what I believe is going to happen is that if they rule that the tariff, the IEEPA tariffs were not constitutional, the Treasury will be ordered to give the money back. There is precedent for doing this. There is a mechanism for doing this. It will be it'll be a long time coming before anyone sees a dime, though. They will obfuscate. They will slow this train down. So they will. You can't rule in their favor and then not give them the money back. That's the essence of the case.
Yeah.
And the Treasury does have a mechanism. They've done it before. So that will be how that goes down. Real quick on the VRA, the Voting Rights Act, I don't see anybody that disagrees that the court is going. I mean, like whether it's 5-4, 6-3, or even 7-2, I think the court is going to rule that the time has come in America where the Voting Rights Act, that those sections that remain don't hold. And then last,
Agreed.
I will say this, mark my word on this, for all of the media posturing that the Constitution is clear on birthright citizenship, that is not true. The court will rule, I believe, that birthright citizenship is not guaranteed. And I think that when I read these stories in the New York Times and the Washington Post that say it's in the Constitution, that is just 100% false, misinformation, and a lie. It is not true. And when you go back and actually look at the original text of what the framers were debating at the time, they went through several drafts. It was very clear that they did not believe that everybody was entitled to citizenship by birth. It's not a disputable fact that was the intent of the thing. Now, what the interpretation is a little bit different, but this idea that it is settled law is 100% a lie being perpetrated by the left-wing media.
You're all about the media today, Sean.
Well,
Right.
that's
That's
what
what
it
he
is.
is.
And
I
anything you want to
actually
add,
agree
Dan?
with John. I think they're going to find a way to chip away at this, and I agree with you, Sean. It is not going to be a black and white ruling, and I think they will chip away at it.
When you go back and you look at how they handled Native Americans and like all sorts, I mean,
Slaves.
and slaves, like they clearly made it very clear, like that was not the intent. And also, even today, if you are the son of an ambassador or a diplomat with diplomatic immunity, you have a child here, they are not given it. Like there's a very clear precedent about how citizenship is handled.
Well, but of course, the flip side to that is Europeans and others who weren't citizens who were coming here who had kids, and that was who they had in mind with this rule. But I agree. I think they are going to find a way, again, because I think this court, where they can, wants to do solids for Trump, is going to do it.
Can I make one quick point that is, again, goes so under the radar sometimes? There is a story that came out a couple of weeks ago about the cottage industry that's developed in China to come over, have babies, and then go back to China. There's like hundreds of thousands of Chinese citizens that have dual citizenship because they've come here, been born here, and then brought back to China. Like there's so many things happening below the radar that just do not get any coverage that we need. And again, I don't know that they would even be subject to this, because it's whether or not you're subject to the laws of this country. Meaning if you come in on a visa, I would argue that you are subject to the laws of this country, like you are legal. And that wouldn't be addressed in this case.
Good thing they're Trump gold cards so that every rich person all over the world can just come in and have babies.
Thank you, Howard Lutnick.
Well, there is no gold card right now for a reason, because I think they recognize the legality, and that's not citizenship.
Did they kill that, Sean? They totally killed that?
I think if it's not, I mean, it's definitely on life support at best.
It's up there with the 10% credit card cap.
That sounds like something I should snoop around about. Okay, let's do another question. Okay, super chat here. Okay, is Zohran Mamdani legally eligible to be vice president? Kamala Zohran ticket?
You know what? I don't know if the rules about the presidency apply to the vice presidency, except that, I mean, let's just say, for instance, it didn't. Then if Kamala were to die or become incapacitated or removed from office, Zohran would not be eligible. So if the Speaker of the House, were Mike Johnson, then Mike Johnson would become, he'd be next in line. So I can't imagine that you would take a risk of allowing the vice president to not be eligible to serve. So unfortunately, I think your fantasy of the ultimate Democratic ticket will not happen. Yeah. And I don't think Kamala is going to be our nominee. I still don't think that. But
do you think he has long-term presidential ambitions?
Don't know. I mean, look, once you get a taste for the spotlight, a lot of people don't want to let it go.
Sure. Let's take another question.
I will tell you one funny story. When we met with Bloomberg when he was mayor of New York early on, and by the way, Zoran Mandami was born in Uganda.
I was just Googling that. Yeah, I think he's not eligible. That's right.
He's not eligible. So yeah, that's not even a. It's not even.
I just looked that up. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
And but we were sitting there having this meeting with Bloomberg, and he was basically saying New York City mayor is probably, outside of being president, the most powerful position because blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's giving this whole recitation. So if you're Mandami, the question is, do you really what is next? I would argue that that being mayor is probably more important than being governor in New York.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like a bigger spotlight, but he couldn't win statewide, could he?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I would have told you 2 years ago.
I would rather say mayor of New York for 10 years than governor.
I mean, he might. I mean, look, you just never know.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us. I meant to mention this at the top of the show. I will mention this at the top of the show tomorrow. Don't forget, we have our State of the Union special next Tuesday. We will be talking before the State of the Union. We'll have it on through the show, and then we'll digest it with y'all after. So mark your calendars. And
join us.
Yeah. What do you got going on today, Sean?
Trump pollster Jim McLaughlin will join us to break down all of the latest. So we'll find out where things stand.
You should also ask him about the New York gubernatorial race. He's isn't he working with the Republican? What's his name? Why can't I?
Brad Blakeman.
Yeah, Blakeman. He's working with Blakeman.
Yeah. All right. I'll bring it up.
For sure. That he's super happy that Stefanik dropped out. Okay, guys. We'll see you tomorrow at 8:30.